In this video, we're going to look at the baseline survey, which are the surveys that the cooling users are asked to fill in when they first join a cold room project. So how to complete them? The cold room operator can navigate to management and then to the cooling user section and choose one user. For example, let's choose Mercy. And by clicking on cooling user survey, the cold room operator can access the survey for these users. So this survey has already partially been filled in. What we see here is there are three sets of questions. The first question is understanding whether the cooling user is a farmer or rather a vendor, a trader, or a wholesaler. We also want to understand whether the user has been using the cold room in the past. This is important information to then understand whether this baseline data that we are collecting actually refers to a time period in which no cold room was used. And then the third set of questions, it's about the commodities that the user harvests or trades the most. So this is a modular question in which basically the user should answer for each of the crops that they harvest or trade and that they intend to bring into the cold room. Because the idea here is that we want to compare what they declare, what the user declares when they start using cold storage and what they declare as they're using cold storage. So the information for Apple, as we see here, is already filled in for Mercy, but let's imagine that now Mercy also brings in some beans, and so we want to complete this survey for beans. So we click on Add Commodity, then we select from the commodity shortlist which is the commodity we want to fill in the surveys for, in this case beans, then we click on OK. And then we see here that there are very few questions that we want to ask. The first question is how much does the user Mercy produce or trade in a week? And this is, of course, beans. And here what's important is that you can change what is the unit that you are answering this question in, so that in case maybe answering in kilograms is not easy for the user, you can, for example, submit your answers in, say, boxes. If you click on, let's imagine, boxes, then you can also specify how many kilos each box is, so that then we can reference this back to the kilogram sort of for the calculation. So let's imagine that in a box, there are approximately 10 kilos, and the user Mercy declares that in a week, maybe she produces 3 boxes of beans. The next question is about how much of these 3 boxes are actually self-consumed, so used for the household, how many are sold, and how many are lost or sold below the market price. What's important here is that the data that you use to fill in these boxes should sum up to the amount they're specifying here. For example, let's imagine that Mercy actually doesn't consume any of the beans that she's producing. She's rather, selling 2 boxes, but unfortunately, every week she's losing 1 box because the produce is spoiled or she's forced to liquidate their produce in the end of a market day. So what we see here is that, 2 boxes and 1 box, the sum is 3, which is exactly the amount here. And you will see that an error is thrown if, for example, here you put 4, and the sum is not the same as what's indicated here. So let's make it correct, 2 and 1. The next question that we want to ask is what is the reason actually for this crop spoilage, which of course makes sense only in case in which this number here is larger than 0. And you can select more than one option. For example, let's imagine that she's losing these beans because of transportation damages. And then finally, what we want to understand is what is the price at which the user is selling these beans. And again, here we're talking about a normal situation in which no cold storage is used. So let's imagine that, for example, she sells usually these beans at around 3,000 naira per box. So once you have done this, you can confirm. And what you'll see here is that a new commodity has been added to this list. You can click on confirm to make sure that the data about the beans is recorded. The last thing that I want to show you in this video is how you can access these surveys. The first thing is that anytime you add a new user, you will be prompted to fill in the survey. If the user or you don't have time to do this at the time of registration, you can always click on the user and then click on cooling user survey to fill this in. And there are 2 more ways in which you can fill this in. The first option is that during a check-in, in case you choose a user and a set of a crop type for which no survey has been filled in. Let me show you this quickly. What you will see is that at the time of check-in, there is a prompt that asks you to fill in the baseline survey for that specific crop. So you can click on Go and actually be directed to this pop-up where you can directly fill in the information. As you see here, it's already clear that we're talking about bitter leaf. The second place where you can also access the baseline survey is that in case you complete a check-in without filling in the survey, and the survey has not been filled in previously, then you will receive a notification. And the notification looks something like this. You have checked in bananas for this user Ben, for example, but you have not completed the survey. So what you can do is that you can click on this and you will see the same pop-up for banana that can be filled in. So these are different ways, and the idea here is that for one user and one crop type, this survey needs to be filled in only once, and ideally this should happen as soon as the user is using cold storage for the first time, because what we want is we want to record baseline data, so information before the cold storage intervention, to then compare this with what happens as the cold storage is used. This concludes our video on the baseline survey. In the next video, we are going to look at the after storage or market survey.